ever had this feeling on a first date where you see a red flag or something just feels off, but you go back for date 2 anyway? It's not just you that does this. Smart, self-aware women do this all the time. And then in hindsight, when the connection rolls on and those first red flag instincts become clearer and louder, and eventually might even be the cause of the relationship ending, maybe you've experienced that. I know I definitely have. Well, then we have this tendency to blame ourselves and ask ourselves, well, you know, why didn't I listen to my intuition? Why didn't I trust my instincts on this? You see, you're aware of what the red flag is, right? You're able to name it in your mind, but you still seem to override that inner voice telling you to walk away. And the truth is, when you're watching videos on red flags and dating, you kind of already know that those are red flags, right? Like, you don't really need to be told the obvious, but you keep on watching this content anyway, because despite knowing what these red flags are, you still keep overlooking them and overriding your intuition that tells you that that quality or red flag is not compatible with what you're looking for in a relationship, right? And there can sometimes be a feeling of frustration in this, because if you know what the red flags are, then why don't you take the appropriate action, such as walking away or ending the connection? So here's the thing. It feels like it's a conscious choice that you're making to ignore the red flag, but really, it's not so simple. You see, you might be thinking, oh well, maybe I ignore these red flags because I'm finally here on a date with this man, and I might as well just give this date the best possible chance, right? Give him the benefit of the doubt. It can actually be a lot of physical effort and energy and emotional effort to be on those dating apps, swiping left and right, having inanely boring conversations, asking people how their days are, having to almost like strike up the conversation and keep it interesting, right? And trying to actually screen in all of that for compatibility in this person, you know, and then you're physically turning up on the date and being emotionally present. So it's a lot of effort, right? So by the time you're finally there on this date, it's totally understandable that you might just be thinking, okay, well, let's just give this its best possible chance, right? And thinking that in itself isn't wrong, but you ignoring the red flag isn't happening at the level of logic, because you already know on an intellect level that this is a red flag, right? You've just witnessed a red flag and you know what it is. You know what you've experienced. But here's what's actually happening. And this part isn't fully in your conscious control. And if you take nothing else away from this video, this is the important point. Your nervous system is prioritizing connection over discernment. So these thoughts aren't you being in denial over rationalizing or being desperate, right? They're your mind actually trying to maintain the connection at any cost. So today we're really going to unpack what's going on so you can trust yourself in dating to make the right decisions and take the right actions for you to find the partner who is the best match, because willpower and awareness alone aren't going to change the pattern. You're already aware that you overlook red flags, and you're not actually ignoring red flags consciously, right? Even though it might feel like you are making an intentional choice. So let's slow this down for a bit, because this is where most of us get super confused and end up blaming ourselves. You see, when a red flag appears, what you might think is happening is this: I noticed something, I had an instinct, and then I ignored it. But that's not actually the sequence of what's going on. What's really happening is that two completely different systems inside of you are responding at the same time. One part of you does notice the red flag, and that's your cognitive awareness, right? Your pattern recognition. That's all coming from the mind, right? And that's the part of you that has done all the work. You've watched all the YouTube videos, you've read all the books, you've had a therapist, maybe you've even had a coach, but almost immediately, once your brain is like, hang on a second, I don't think I like that. I have a feeling we've been here before and I don't think we like this. Almost immediately, another system kicks into place. And that system isn't interested in whether this person is compatible with your long-term desires. It's interested in one thing and one thing only. Is connection at risk? Because your nervous system is not designed to optimize for relationship quality. Deep down, your body isn't asking yourself the same question as your mind. Is this man completely compatible with me and my long-term future? No, your nervous system doesn't care about that. Your nervous system is designed to optimize for attachment and survival, or in essence, safety, right? So it's saying, what do I have to do to keep the peace right now and maintain the connection so that I don't get abandoned? And when connection feels even slightly threatened, even with someone you don't even like, right? That discernment can become secondary. And that's why this doesn't feel like a rational decision in your mind, because you're like, well, I know the red flag. Why do I just keep doing this, right? You've read all the video, you've read all the books, you've watched all the videos. So why does this kind of keep happening? Or you've spotted something that just on the inside, it feels icky and you know you've got to keep an eye on it. But instead of actually doing the thing that seems most rational, and this is the part where you're getting frustrated with yourself, right? Instead of actually being like, you know what, that's just danger waiting to happen. So let's just cut this short before it turns into that whirlwind circus carnival of an experience that we're trying to avoid in relationships, right? Instead, it feels like a pull, right? Like you're drawn into it. It's like a hesitation. It's like self-doubt, right? And it can sometimes almost feel like you're second guessing yourself. And this is where those thoughts come in, right? Maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe I just need to soften a little bit and relax. No one's perfect. I should give this a second chance. Have you ever said these things to yourself? Let me know in the comments if you have, right? But these thoughts aren't random or weakness. They're protective strategies, right? So they exist to keep connection intact. Now, for many of you watching this pattern did not start in adulthood. It started way earlier than that, because when you were a child, you didn't have the option of walking away from relationships, right? That didn't feel good. With your parents or caregivers, you weren't sitting there thinking, well, you know what, mum picked me up from school late, and you know what, that goes below my standards, red flag, swipe left, blocked, right? You weren't doing that. You couldn't do that with your caregivers. You couldn't afford to destroy that connection or that relationship, right? So as children, we can't create distance. You can't leave. You are dependent. And that's the key point. As a child, you are dependent on your parents and your caregivers or other authority figures. So you don't actually get the option of having standards, right? So your system learns something very specific. Maintaining connection is more important than expressing discomfort. And this was more important than naming what's not okay. It was more important than trusting your inner signals. Maybe you learned to stay quiet. Maybe you learned to be understanding. Maybe you learned to minimize your needs, walk on eggshells, to rationalize other people's behavior instead of actually responding to it in the way that it makes you feel. And none of that means that actually anything went wrong at all. It means your system adapted, your nervous system adapted. And here's the part that most of us never get taught. Even though you're no longer dependent as an adult, your nervous system doesn't automatically update like an iPhone, right? You're still on that old software from your childhood, and your nervous system still reacts as if connection loss equals ultimate danger. So when you're on a date and something feels off, your body doesn't say, hey, let's calmly assess compatibility, if only, right? If only. It says, let's not disrupt connection at any cost. Let's wait and see. Let's not jump to conclusions. And this is why I really want to slow this distinction down. Seeing a red flag and feeling safe enough to actually act on it are two completely different skills. And one of those, seeing the red flag and being aware of it runs on skill set and awareness, which, Queen, you already have down. You know it all, right? When it comes to dating, you've been like consuming that content like the world's going to end tomorrow, right? But the other system, acting on it, runs on autopilot. Most of you keep blaming yourself, right, for not being smart enough or disciplined enough or self-aware, or I've heard a lot of women say, well, maybe I'm just too naive for the modern dating world, right, to spot that red flag or to act on it. But you did see it. You did see it. There's actually nothing wrong with your intuition or your discernment, right? You don't need any more awareness. You're already extremely aware. The real issue is that acting on what you notice still feels unsafe on a body level. So you don't override the red flag because you're confused, right? It's not that you are confused and you're like, oh, well, maybe I should just give this another chance because what if it could be this or what if it could be that? On a deeper level, you override it because on some level your system believes maintaining connection is the safer option right now. And this is why willpower doesn't cut it. It doesn't work, right? You kind of already know that. This is why telling yourself, okay, well, I just won't ignore the red flags again. It doesn't change it, right? So you don't override the red flag because you're confused, right? You override it because on some level, your system believes that maintaining connection is the safer option right now. And this is why willpower alone doesn't work. This is why telling yourself, I won't ignore red flags again, doesn't change what happens in the actual moment. Because this isn't a decision happening in your thinking mind, it's a response happening in your body and nervous system. And I want to say this really clearly because it matters. Nothing has gone wrong with you. The response you're having makes perfect sense when you understand the environment that it was shaped in, right? It only becomes a problem when you make it mean you're weak or you're desperate or you're bad at choosing. So if you've ever walked away from a connection and thought, I saw it so early on, why did I let this relationship last? Why didn't I listen to my intuition? The answer isn't actually that you didn't listen. The answer is that at the time, listening felt like it might cost you something emotionally. And the body will always choose what feels safest in the moment. So I want you to leave this video with one very specific reframe. The issue isn't that you ignore red flags. The issue is that you don't yet feel safe enough to honor them. And those are not the same things. Once you understand this, the real question becomes, hey, so if attraction and familiarity can't be fully trusted yet, how do you know what's actually healthy in the early stages of dating? Click the next video in this playlist to find out, and I'm sending you so much love.